Hello all. I'm Yash and I'm a student pursuing my dual degree in BITS Goa. So my project here at MS is Cable Segment Vulnerability Index in the Indian Oceanic region. So these are some of the topics which I will be covering today, which is basically the scope of the project, the unique contributions, methodology, and the results. So before we actually jump into the project, it is important for us to understand why it is so important and such a critical topic. So as you know that majority of the data transaction or the financial transactions which take place happen in the Indian ocean happen in the form of submarine data cables. Like the data is transferred through cables, which accounts for roughly 95 to 99% of the data. Also, another important factor which we generally fail to take into account is that a cable is not a single line. It is basically various segments which are put together to make an entire cable. So each and every segment has a different sort of thread which actually affects it. So in this project, I'm focusing on three major threads, namely the anthropogenic threads, the seismic threads, and the bathymetry ones. Also, one really important factor as to why this project is important is that whenever there's some threat or there's a damage caused to the cable due to various factors, generally the cost of repairing and also the cost of actually spotting where the damage is done is really high. So through this project, I'm actually planning to make an make, I can say, a user friendly portal or user interactive portal through which people can actually get an idea about which section of the cable has the most risk of damage, so that as the project progresses further, they will actually be able to precisely locate as to where the damage has occurred. So moving forward, there's actually a model which already exists, which is named as SIRA model, which is a short form for cable integrity risk awareness. So this model mainly focuses on it basically focuses on wind farm and power cables, whereas the model which I am currently making, the CSVR, it focuses on all the submarine cables, but I would say majority of it focuses on the telecom cables. Also, the main difference which we actually have between these two models is that the Sierra model actually focuses more on the installment rather than the maintenance of the cable. Like the main thing which they use is a function known as depth of lowering. Basically, they look after the entire installation process and focus more on that. And based on that, they give three color codes, namely the red, amber, and green for the safety scores. Whereas in my models, we are looking at cables which are already existing in the Indian Oceanic region. Also, the Sierra model, which is there, uses uh, it mainly uses uh, just a second. Sorry, the Sierra model basically uses does not use a composite score, but rather it uses the AI's data to live track the things. Whereas here I'll be using historical data. So basically, in easier terms, quantitative data to make a continuous composite function to give me a risk index score. So for methodology, as I mentioned before, there are three main parameters which I'm considering. First one being the anthropogenic parameters, which include of fishing as well as the anchor. The second one is seismic, and the third one is bathymetry. There are various other factors such as temperature and water currents, but those are not included because they contribute to a really small section as compared to these three parameters. So how does this project actually work? So basically, we are dividing the entire project using the Uber H7 hexagons. So these hexagons are basically done so that we can isolate each and every segment, which will roughly be of length 5.33 kilometers. And for each of these hexagons, we'll be actually able to calculate a risk index score based on these three parameters. Also, one important thing to note is that uh, in this model, I'm actually breaking down into three different horizons, namely the 1 year, 5 year, and 10 year. And while doing so, it will actually give us an analysis as to how long exposure actually creates more problems for the cable. Like let's say a cable is submerged for has been installed for 1 year as compared to a cable which has been submerged for 5 years. So we actually observe that a cable which has been submerged for 5 years is prone to more damages as compared to the cable which is submerged for 1 year. Now these are some numerical. So my model is actually mathematical based, like my dual degree is math. So here I'll be using numerical models rather than machine learning. So over here, there are three main formulas which I'll be using. The first one is the logarithmic formula, which is basically a Gutenberg-Richter formula, which is derived from the Richter scale and is used everywhere. The second one is the bathymetric formula, which is the infinite slope or the safety formula. This is also one of the formulas which is cited in various research papers. And finally, I'll be using a simple Poisson. And finally, I'll be using a simple Poisson formula over here. Like there's no cited formula for this, but this is the basic probability model which you can actually take into consideration. So this is the numerical model which I will be using. So finally, moving on to results and outputs. So basically, this model will focus. In this model, since it's a user interactive portal, so basically user has to select an area on the Indian oceanic region, and based on it, it will actually be able to select which time horizon it is looking for. So let's say he wants to analyze the cable risk score for 1 year, 5 year, or 10 years. So based on that, at the back end, these two outputs will be taken into consideration, and using the code which I have got from various sources and the data which I have collected, it will actually give us a PDF format, which will basically consist of a report regarding the area which the user has selected. Also, it would give us the risk index score due to each of its components and as to how we actually got it. So it would be like a complete explanation related document which would be able to give the user a clear understanding as to why each and every value is mentioned over there. So this is how we actually plan to, this is how the front end would look like. This is not the exact picture, but this is what all features will be available. Like the lines present over here are the submarine cables which are present right now. And so finally coming to conclusion, so like why is this project really important? So one parameter is that, as we know that majority, looking in the Indian subcontinent, we know that the telecom communication does not really uh, have a lot of knowledge about these things. Like although they have not considered a lot of things. So I believe that if we actually take this project into consideration, it would be really helpful for the Department of Telecommunication to look into it, as well as for people who are doing further research. This project can serve as a, I would say, as a base mark to actually work more on.